Well, how do you go by?
I'm starting to become more comfortable with tomorrow. So
Tomorrow, okay? Whatever your wish is, that's what we try to do. Anna? Okay. Sarah Abigail? You go with both names or one name?
same answer as Josephine.
So you're comfortable with?
Sarah Abigail, like the teachers and like if there's more Sarahs.
Okay. Sarah Mara. Okay. Tova?
Hello.
Oh, okay. You're on a higher level there. Shayna? Shayna Partush, not here yet.
Her dog is here.
Rivka Shira? I guess they didn't come from the other class yet. Leah is here. Sharonel is here.
She should be home.
Hannah Sternberg, not yet. Tehila
Hello.
is here, okay. Change seat. Sofa Gula, okay. Sarah Beznos over there, okay. Rivka,
I'm here.
okay. That's it. Okay, Michal is here. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakal v'yom. Sorry, the guy after class. After class, huh? One part. What? Yeah, I called her. And I figured out myself who it is. Yeah.
Wow, look at you.
Oh, it's you. Okay, yeah.
Look at you go. No, you're in a higher level. You know, I'll send my YouTube. Yeah, hopefully. I don't think I needed that one.
Okay, I think we have the whole gang.
The whole gang here.
It's a good gang. The good guys.
Hashtag God gang.
Okay, so yesterday we were on page 3 in the booklet, and we were talking about the idea of creating a fence. And we began to discuss. Wait 1 second. Yeah?
Yeah, probably it's kind of weird seeing you at school, not in the dorm. Yeah.
First time, I want to come to class on the
That would be crazy. Crazy? Yeah, you know, like a good crazy. Like, yo, what this?
Where's the stamp where they let you in here this time? It says, there's no stamp. This is one. This for sure I have to take. Oh, this is Besrufka. For some reason or other, they don't have the stamp. Let me see.
Why didn't they stamp?
It's supposed to be a stamp, yeah.
Broke a glass on my shoulders. I got a rock hard shoulder. You also have a rock hard shoulder.
Wrong one.
Your mistake?
No, I'm using the
Oh,
wrong
just
one.
kidding. Never mind. I didn't want to say. Fine, you have a rocking personality. That's next on my
Okay, then see if you can find the paper. If there isn't, there isn't. There should be a paper that has a stamp like this, but with the date that you came into the United States now, 2021. Let's see if there's such a stamp. Okay, so sorry. So we said that sometimes it can actually backfire, which means a person shouldn't take on more restrictions than they need to, because then it could make it more difficult. And like the story with Chava and the tree, that by taking on more than you really have to take on, you end up losing more than you're gaining. So there's a quote from Gemara, which brings out this point, and that's number three, where it says, Dayach b'meh she'asrach Torah. It's enough that which the Torah prohibited. Don't create your own prohibitions. Don't make sort of fences that are unnecessary. So we need a lot of sort of decision making, whether this is a situation where making a fence is going to be positive, or it's a situation making a fence is going to be negative. Not always is it a positive thing. In fact, if any of you here are studying Rambam, the laws that we do for Maimonides once a day, right now we're doing the laws of a Nazir. A Nazir is a person who takes on and makes a commitment not to drink wine, to let his hair grow, not to go into a place that's impure. And there's an interesting thing. It says it's a period of 30 days. After the 30 days, he has to bring a sacrifice, which is called chatos, atonement. So the Gemara asks, atonement for what? And this is what the Gemara says. The fact that he took upon himself and made a commitment not to drink wine or other things which are normally permissible could also be considered in some ways a sin, because you don't have to deny yourself things that are permissible. So therefore, it's very hard in a class, to give a general rule. In this case, it is okay. In this case, that's okay. Because every person is different. Every situation is different. And this is one of those things that probably a person should discuss either with a mashpia or a good friend or a rabbi or a rebbitzin, to ask, knowing me, what do you think? Is this taking on too much? I'll give you an example. A lot of students, when they first come and they realize how important davening is, they get very excited. And they're going to daven the whole davening every day. It lasts for about a week and a half. Then they're doing less, and then they say, it's just too much. Stop. I'm not davening at all. I feel guilty. Yes, no davening at all. So the fact that it took on so much only made them not do anything. So therefore, we have to know both things.
What is a Nazir?
A Nazir is, in Torah, there are laws which are related to vows and to oaths. You make an oath, you have to keep it. You make a vow, you have to keep it. So a Nazir is a specific kind of vow that he's going to be for 30 days, he won't drink any wine, let his hair grow long, not go and not allow himself to be in the presence of a dead body, which makes him impure, and do that for 30 days. And what's the point behind it? The point behind it is something like this. Like if he sees that he's a little bit too immersed and obsessed and with sort of worldly pleasures, he tries to back off a little bit by taking on this. But the truth is, people shouldn't take on oaths and vows, because then you might be violating another part of Torah. So therefore, if he does it, this is what he has to do. But he does bring a carbon, he uses sacrifice later, because he needs forgiveness. So what's related to this is number 4. Very often people will say that, okay, I know myself, I'm strong, I'm not going to stumble over this or that. I don't have to follow these fences that the Torah made. Like I gave the example the other day, with something which is common and not so easy, is the laws of yichud, of a man and a woman being alone. Happens often when you're going to work, and you're in an office, and you're the only ones there, and sometimes it's an office that you have to buzz in order to get in, so you're really locked into this place. So the laws of yichud are not laws that are there since the beginning of time. These laws were established about 500 years after the Torah was given, and it was established by the Beth Din, the court of rabbis of King David, because of some incidents that happened. So someone comes along and says, okay, this is a fence, but I know myself, I'm a strong person, and I don't need any fences. I know what's right, and I know what's wrong, and I'll be okay. So here we have again a quote from Gemara, number 4. It says, Al taimin ba'atzmacha ad yom mosach. In fact, this quote is also in Pirkei Avos, but in the 2nd chapter, which means don't trust yourself until the last day of your life, meaning to say every human being could never know their own weaknesses. You might think that you're okay, but when you're in a certain situation, you might be weak and give in to Yetzer Hara. But to give an example, there's a story in Gemara where it says that one of the laws of Shabbos is you're not allowed to create a fire on Shabbos. Not only that, if there's already a fire, you're not allowed to add oil to make the fire stronger or bigger. Now, as a result of that, the rabbis instituted a halacha, which is like a fence. And that is, if you were studying Torah Friday nights, there in those days wasn't electricity, so it was like by a candle. You're not allowed to study by yourself, because when a person studies by candlelight, very often they have to adjust the candle, adjust the flame, the wick, and you might not realize it and do it. So therefore, if you're studying with a partner and you do something wrong, he'll make you aware. But if you're there by yourself, you might end up adjusting the flame, and you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. Yeah.
A question about like offenses and stuff. Like, for example, like this makes sense when you're talking about like if or something that like is something negative. But like one offense that I don't really understand is like with Kalisha, and like not the law, like one person not singing, but like the halacha being like 3 people singing, but when there's a big group of women, maybe we don't sing. Like, I guess like I'm asking like how is this don't trust yourself? How does this number 4 if it applies to that offense specifically, and like if you could explain that.
It applies mainly in a situation where normally it calls for offense, whatever that situation is, either it's halacha or it's personal, and your personal mentor will say, you need to make offense, don't go there, or don't do that. And you say, I know myself, I'm not a weakling, it won't happen to me. So the Mishnah says you should never trust yourself 100%, because you really don't know how you'll be under those circumstances, which means right now I feel strong. But when you're under the influence of a certain temptation, you might feel very different. So the questions you have, each individual case would have to be dealt with individually. But the principle is, if it's something which in reality does call for offense, and I say to myself, but I'm different, I don't need defense, and the Mishnah says, don't think that way, because no one could really be 100% sure of themselves, because we have this Yitzhar and you can't be sure.
More personal, not like from the books of offense stuff or written down offenses. It's more of like you're working with your rabbi or
right. You work with someone who knows you personally and knows your circumstances and hopefully knows your strengths and your weaknesses and can guide you. And if it's something which the Torah set up as a general rule for everybody, then the person shouldn't say, but I'm an exception. I'm stronger than all those people.
Like you said, that's like so widely set up.
Yeah. Anyway, in this story, there was a sage called Rabbi Shmuel. He was probably one of the biggest sages in the entire generation. And he was studying Torah Friday night. And he said, I don't have to be worried about this. It'll never would ever happen to me that on Shabbos I'll adjust the candle. Impossible. And guess what? He was sitting and studying. He was very immersed in what he was learning. And then it got a little bit dim, and his hand just reached out to the candle, and he adjusted it on Shabbos. What did he do? He publicized the story. Normally, you don't publicize your failure, your failings and your stumblings. But he publicized the story. And why did he publicize it? That people should learn from him and don't say, I'm different, because you don't know what it'll be like under those circumstances. Another example of this is number 5. Does anyone know what the term tzeduki means? Is here in the number 5 on the bottom, tzeduki? No. You'll learn about it a lot in school. Tzeduki was a movement that existed in the times of the Second Temple. And the reason why it's called tzeduki is because the founder of the movement, his name was Tzadok. So all those that followed him are called tzedukim. And there's still a pocket of people like that in certain places in the world that follow this movement. And what's the movement? They believe in the written Torah, but they don't believe in the oral Torah. So they'll do things as it's written in the Chumash. For example, the Torah says that on Shabbos, you should sit in your house. The oral Torah explains, it doesn't mean you have to sit in your house the whole day. It means you're not allowed to walk further than a certain distance from your house if there's no homes around. In other words, in an area that there's no buildings, nobody's living there. Yeah?
Are these like, is this the same as the Kairos?
Yeah, Kairos is the same thing. It's a different name because there was it was a branch of this movement at a different time in history, but it's the same thing, Kairos. I actually once had a student there that said that her father on his passport, when he asked for nationality, writes Kairos. So it's still alive and well. But not too many, but there are some people, especially in where is it called? Crimea, in Russia, the Ukraine. There is a group there that used to be a big center of these kind of people. So one of the big things that make a difference was in the Beis Hamikdash. On Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, was allowed to walk into the Holy of Holies only once a year on Yom Kippur. And when he went in, he would bring the incense. It was on fire and would create a cloud. But in the Chumash, if you look at the words in the Torah itself, it appears that you light it outside and you walk in as it's already lit. The oral Torah and the oral tradition explains, no, you light it inside. So there were some people who belonged to this group and they managed to become the high priest and they walked in doing it the wrong way. And what happened was they did it the wrong way, they died in the Holy of Holies. They had to find a way how to take them out. So the Gemara says, just to give an example how you can't trust yourself, Yochanan Kohen Gadol, there was a man, his name was Yochanan, he was a high priest, and he served as a high priest for 80 consecutive years. So he must have been over 100 years old, because you don't become a high priest when you're a baby. So he served as a high priest for 80 years, but at the end, he became a tzedukah, and he did it the wrong way, and he died in the Holy of Holies. What's the point? The point is, obviously something got over him. Somebody convinced him that this is right and that's wrong for whatever way. How they did it, we don't know. But it just means to indicate that we cannot really trust ourselves. Okay, I think we're ready to do another Mishnah, Mishnah 2. Mishnah 2 is one of the most famous Mishnahs in Pirkei Avos. So we're going back to the beginning of the booklet where you have the Mishnahs over here, the front page. Anyone that doesn't have a booklet, you don't have a booklet? No. Beis, Mishnah 2. Shimon HaTzadik. There was a man, he was called Shimon the Righteous. Haya Meshirei Knesset HaGdolah. He was one of the last surviving members of the men of the Great Assembly. Yesterday I mentioned that there was a group of sages, they were called the men of the Great Assembly. They lived in the time of the end of the first temple, the beginning of the second temple. If you want to have some idea of one of the people of that group, the story of Purim that had Mordechai, who was the leader of the Jewish people, who was then the leader at the time of Haman and that whole story, that Mordechai was one of the 120 sages. And eventually they passed on. This person, Shimon HaTzadik, was the last. He was the last one to survive this group. And he would say that the world stands on three things. What are the three things? Torah, the service of Hashem, and the acts of kindness. Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim. Literally, it means Torah means the studying of Torah. Avodah, serving Hashem, means the observance of the mitzvahs and the commandments. And Gemilas Chasodim means specifically acts of kindness. In other words, mitzvahs could mean mitzvah like keeping Shabbos, keeping the holidays, blowing the shofar. But Gemilas Chasodim is particular mitzvah that pertain to how individuals interact with each other in a kind way, in a sensitive way, in a caring way, and so on. So this could be explained on a larger scale, that the whole world in order for it to be stable and solid, needs all three things. If there's Torah study and there's observance of mitzvahs, because the reason why Hashem gave us the mitzvahs, this is a guide how to live a productive life, a decent life, to do what's right, not to do what's wrong. And of course, in order for people to live peacefully with each other, if everybody would follow everything it says in Pirkei Avos, it would be a beautiful, beautiful world. If everyone have good character traits and interact with each other the way it should be. So we have these three things. And he always used to say, the world stands on these three things. In some ways, especially when you study Hasidus, we find that a person, and the sort of the whole person is divided into three parts. There's the intellect, there's the emotion, and then there's actual practical performance. So the intellect, that's Torah. The Torah is there to enhance the way we think, to give us the right perspective. Mitzvahs are done with the feeling of the heart, so that's geared towards the emotion, that we should have the right feelings. And acts of kindness, that's action. These are the three levels within a person's life: intellect, emotion, and action. So Hashem gave us in each area that which will guide us to take the right direction. Torah study, mitzvahs, and acts of kindness. Now the question is, what's acts of kindness? How do you define acts of kindness? And we said yesterday that in every culture, in every religion, different countries, they will define it differently. What one country might consider act of kindness, another country might look at it as something negative. So what is acts of kindness? So we have a Mishnah. This Mishnah is found, Mishnah means part of the Talmud, but it's in the Siddur. And we say it every morning. And then we have a list of things which I want to go over that list. So I'm going to go over some of these things. We have it here on page 4. If you turn to page 4, we will come across a list of things which the Torah consists. They're acts of kindness, and each one includes a lot of details. This sort of a general category. Let's start with the first one. The first one is Bikur Cholim, visiting the sick. There is a section in the Jewish Code of Law that it's a mitzvah to visit someone when they're not feeling well. And the mitzvah is because by doing that, you're helping them out. But the truth is, not only is it about visiting, it means anything you can do to help a person who's not well. Sometimes it means helping them get a doctor. Sometimes it means helping them financially so they can afford the doctor. Sometimes it means bringing them food because they're not well and they have nobody to bring them food and they're starving. So you call them up and you find out what they need. Can I go shopping for you? Anything you do to help a person that's sick included in visiting the sick, but specifically coming to a person, spending some time with them. But of course, you have to use your common sense when you're visiting someone that's sick to do it in a positive way, in a way that will make them feel better. There was a woman who once wrote an article and she put it into a very famous magazine. And she said, I want to tell you, if you ever plan to visit people that are sick, make sure you do it with common sense. And she tells a story about herself, that she was sick, she was in the hospital, she had a rare disease. And a friend came to visit her. And they start talking, then the friend says, so what exactly is this condition that you have? What is it called? And she tells her the name. It wasn't something very common. And she goes, yeah, I have a cousin who died from that a few months ago. That was the last thing she needed to hear when she's in the hospital suffering with this disease. But that's common sense. Common sense is when you're visiting somebody sick, you don't sit by their bedside for 3 hours. They're not well, they need their time, they want to do something. You go in for a short time and you say something positive, something to uplift their spirits. In fact, it says something in Gemara. I guess the details have to be analyzed. But the Gemara says that when you go into a person that's sick and you spend time with them, it takes away a 60th of their illness. Let's translate that in simple words. It'll help them heal quicker. And I remember reading an article. It was in a magazine that was just a science magazine or a health magazine. And they said they did a study and they found that people who have studied people in the hospital, but those who had visitors, they recovered quicker than those that had no visitors, because part of recuperating our health has to do with your mood, with how you feel. And when people come to you and spend time with you, and you feel that you're important to them, that just lifts your spirit and it helps you heal.
Many hospitals have the service of clowns.
Clowns.
To make people
Happy.
feel happy and
Yeah.
smile. There is something about smiling.
There's a story. I'm going to finish with this story, but there's a story with the Baal Shem Tov. It's a long story, but I'll make it short because we don't have that much time. But the story shows us the power of this mitzvah, that there was once the time when the Baal Shem Tov wasn't yet known as the Baal Shem Tov. He was a hidden tzaddik, and he was in a city called Brod. That was the name of the city. Yes, it's a city in Poland. And as he was walking down the street, he saw somebody pass through the street. And people were like greeting him, but in a very strange way. They were calling him Hirschel Tzig, which means his name was Hirschel, his Jewish name. And Tzig in Yiddish means a goat. Hirschel goat. Why are they calling him Hirschel goat? It almost looked like they were making fun of something. He wasn't sure. But what he did see was, he said he saw a spiritual light shining from this person as if he would have been the greatest tzaddik on earth. So he figured he must be a hidden tzaddik. But he himself knew all the hidden tzaddikim. He didn't know about this person. He did some research, and nobody knows who this person is. So Baal Shem Tov decided to watch the way he davens, watch the way he studies Torah, watch the way he acts to see if he's really a hidden tzaddik. He observed all that, and he didn't see anything unusual. And he knew what to look for. So the Baal Shem Tov prayed that it should be revealed to him from heaven, what is this about the person? What is this brilliant light that he sees? He did find out that he has goats in his house, and when people need goat's milk, they go to him because goat's milk is healthier than ordinary milk, and he gives them the goat's milk, and he gives it to people that are sick or women that just gave birth and they need something, gives them more nutrition. So the Baal Shem Tov, the next day, sees him and says to him, I would like to have some goat's milk. Can I come to your house? He said, sure, come with me. Goes to his house. As soon as he opens the door, all the goats jump on him and they're licking him. These were his friends. And he says to the Baal Shem Tov, you want to know what I do? And he tells a story. And he says that his wife used to be very much into visiting people that are sick, helping people that were sick, helping women that gave birth, and she dedicated herself to this. And she passed away 10 years earlier. After she passed away, something very unusual happened. She came to him in a dream. And she said she always heard people talking about what goes on after life. And there's these punishments and there's all these things that happen to a person. She said she knew nothing of it. She just was rewarded in some incredible way, mainly because of what she did for helping the sick. And she said to her husband, I asked for permission, if I would have permission to come to you in a dream and share this with you, because you're not a learned person, you're a simple Jew, and you should also dedicate yourself to the same thing now that we know the reward. And she told me that I should dedicate my life to this purpose. And that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. Last night, she came to me in a dream again. And she said, there's going to be a person, a rabbi that you don't recognize, is going to ask you to go to your house, tell him the story, and through him, you will be helped. So when he told this Baal Shem Tov realized he's not learned, he's not a tzaddik, he's a simple Jew, but because of this mitzvah of helping people who were sick, he earned this brilliant spiritual light that was shining as a result of this mitzvah. And then the Baal Shem Tov said, well, now that I'm here already, let me teach you some Torah. He began to teach him Torah, and then Baal Shem Tov had to leave, so he found a replacement. And eventually this person himself became one of the hidden tzaddikim. But it was all the result of the mitzvah that he did to help people that are sick. So of course, we hope that everybody will be well, nobody will be sick. But, and by the way, sick doesn't mean God forbid, who knows what. A cold is also, you have a cold, you don't feel well, you need a hot drink, call up a friend, can I bring you a hot soup, you want a hot coffee? And it's a very important thing. And that's one of the things which are considered in Torah acts of kindness. In every Torah community, there's going to be a fund, and there'll usually be a committee of people that is called Bikur Cholim. They're there to help people that need help in this kind of circumstance. Okay. To be continued. Yeah.
Thank you,
You're
Rabbi.
very welcome. And if it's your own daughter that gives birth, it's also a mitzvah. Even if it's your own daughter that gives birth, it's also a mitzvah.
Yeah. That's my case.
Yeah. This is one. So it didn't have the other one.
Thank you so much. No, I have to work right now. I'm trying to remember. Thank you. Help you. Help me.
Where were you?
My nails are today. Not here this morning.
Yeah, I miss you. I miss you.
So what are you gonna do for an hour?
Yeah, I wish I could.
I better get ready.
But it's gonna come
You can take a nap. I want to take a nap.
the right time.
You're going somewhere? No, wait. You come to see her. For real is. I have to go potty. You're a mess. I have to go. Oh, $12. I low-key think he has Venmo. That was a rumor that I heard. You cash up him? I can cash up and then you can Venmo. That's a lot of technology. I don't have it. I only got cash up.